the BP team have built something and scaled it across the organization, something that maybe we'll find out from Nick and Alan throughout the chat here. The digital garage that they've implemented to bring solutions like Keelvar in to test and then scale across the organization is a testament to the team. So Alan and Nick are going to run through that for us for 30 minutes. Then we'll be followed by a panel session with Toby Burton and some of our other expert customers. So again, welcome. Thank you, Nick. Thanks, Alan.
Thanks. Thanks very much, John. So glad to get started in the afternoon session on day one with, I suppose, a customer we're proud to be working with, and a customer, at the risk of embarrassing the BP team, a customer that can show others how to do this well and how to embrace modern technology and be systematic whilst casting a wide net and going through a process of selection, but also rolling out a system and getting the most out of it. And we love working with a business that is clear on where it wants to get to. So in this discussion, I'll invite Nick Wright to talk us through their process. So first of all, maybe Nick, I'll invite you to introduce yourself in the Digital Garage.
Sure. So Nicholas Wright, and I lead our Procurement Digital Garage for BP. So for those that aren't familiar with BP, we're an integrated energy company. We spend around about $30 billion per annum, so it's quite a large spend. And so we've had a digital garage in place for about 3 years now. So I keep wanting to call it a new concept, but it probably isn't anymore.
So first of all, it'd be good to understand how the digital garage is organized and where it sits within your business, and like the reporting line. Is it in IT or is it within procurement? Just talk us through how it's organized.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked, because I normally get BP, digital garage, what forecourt are you on, and sort of, what's your uniform? So good question. So we're based within the procurement function. And I think that's a really important thing for folks that are considering a garage. And one of the biggest reasons is because we're close to where the work happens. So, we're really familiar with the nuances of the processes and how things are done in practice.
Yeah. Would it be fair to say that it's becoming a trickier job? There's so much noise out there at the moment. I've gone to tech conferences, and after spending 25 years working in AI, I look around a tech conference and I don't understand what I'm seeing, or I don't recognize what I'm seeing, because it just doesn't seem to relate back to what I know as AI and experience. But for those who are, I would say, newer to technologies like AI, it must be difficult, first of all. I mean, how do you wrangle with the noise that's out there, and how separating that signal from noise?
It's another good question. I think for me, it's probably worth defining how I think about signals and noise. So for me, signals is something that my team can measure. It's tangible. We can say whether it's there or not. Noise, everyone's selling AI at the moment, and from what I can see, no one's really selling outcomes. And outcomes is an interesting word. I've heard that across many of the different talks today. So for me, what my team is here for is to separate the two, effectively.
Yeah, and so I think that kind of, when you use the word outcomes, it resonates with Dave Devlin's talk earlier, where speaking to outcomes more directly. But what kind of approaches do you take then when you're looking at a potential technology and bringing it in? What is the process of defining what the outcomes should look like? What kind of timescales are we talking about in terms of evaluating vendors? What does that look like? Give us a sense.
We know that suppliers are very good at marketing. I mean, this is a brilliant event, and can run slick demos. And so what the team is here to do is cut through that and test whether what's been promised works in our fairly complex environment. And sometimes things fail because of us, to be frank, not because our suppliers are doing anything wrong. So the way we go about it in the garage is kind of, if anyone remembers being back at school in science lessons, and you create your hypothesis, you define your dependent and independent variables, you set your method, your time frame, which is generally about 3 months. We can go longer, but we try and keep it quite quick. And we set out exactly what the definition of success is for that particular pilot. And then we run it, we test, we pull in the organization. So wherever possible, we use production environment. So it's sort of replicating live situations. And then we just really simply measure the results. And when we get to the end, there's no ambiguity. It's either done what we thought it would, and therefore that's going on a different path, or it hasn't, and that's the end of the path.
Very good. So, so in the case of sourcing, when dealing with Keelvar, talk me through how you get that balance right between casting a wide net, because the wider you cast the net, the less time you can spend with individual vendors. So it's like a breadth versus depth search. What's your approach to that, and what did you do in the case of sourcing tech?
So in particular case of Keelvar, what we did is we focused on the low-hanging fruit, as it were. We focused on the categories where we had the highest chance of success and the least complexity. So in this particular example, we started with logistics, which we know is a sort of tried and tested place for this tool. One of the things that you touched on is, and certainly within BP, the more people you involve, the slower things get and the more complicated the outcomes are.
We've experienced some from our end, it can be confusing for vendors when if there's too many, because we're so much smaller than a BP, but if there are 10 different categories where we've been tested, and there's 10 different stakeholders and 10 different opinions, and there isn't the clarity around what's the decision process in the back. Are we talking to the right people, or for us, we have that problem
If
too.
you think it's confusing for you, then so we have this thing called decision by committee. And actually, before I answer the question, do you have that in Keelvar? How do you work? Are you fairly quick and high conviction?
Well, we try and, I would say, devolve autonomy to teams and devolve it to, I'd say, the teams closest to the problems, and then escalate. It's kind of a trick for trying to keep my life easier too. That if I don't want too many decisions floating up to. If I see too many decisions floating up towards me from certain quarters, then we don't have enough autonomy. So that's our kind of, I would say, what we try to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with the Keelvar example, limit to a relatively small amount of decision makers.
Yeah.
And actually, to be honest, if we're data driven, there shouldn't be any ambiguity anyway. There shouldn't really be any decision by committee. It either did what it said in a hypothesis or it didn't. And in theory, that makes the whole process quicker. So we try and limit the amount of people that were involved.
And now, I would say there's, in this AI era, and I would say there's so much hype and promise and so on. Does it get challenging even, I would say, identifying the outcomes to aim for? Because some hype exaggerates what's feasible, or what, and if you were to believe some marketing hype, you could aim for an outcome that no one can achieve. Mm-hmm. So when you want to, do you take the outcomes from within the business, or do you look at what's out in the tech community and try and aim for what they claim is possible? Mm-hmm. Where do you go? A bit
of both. So we had a really good session just before this on the value case. I think it was Toby.
Toby Burton?
Yeah, Toby. Yeah. The guy without the PhD, I think it was.
That's him. He's never going to this one down.
Yeah, so ultimately we have to. So what we do in the garage is we organize value around an ROI. Yeah. So whatever's important to us in terms of what we think that solution will do, whether it be a reduction in cycle time or cost out. Yeah. And then we calibrate that against the cost of the solution and all of the things that we need in BP to make it work. And that's really our sort of overriding measure is
Yeah.
the ROI.
And then when you have, right, so you've kind of identified what you're aiming for and the people involved, the decision makers. Then when it comes to the point in time where it's, you got A or B or C, is it like Dancing with the Stars or one of those reality TV shows? We have a final and you're the judges.
Yeah.
What talk me through the process towards end game?
Yeah.
You're invariably going to have people who pulling for one vendor, another pulling for another vendor.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile all that?
So we get a stage, and then we get each supplier on, and they sing, and then we score them.
Don't ever invite me to sing.
No, it's a good question. So again, just back to being really certain on if we can't measure it, then it's really on. We're not doing a great job.
You're saying it kind of becomes clear, so it's like it should be very clear.
It should be really black and white.
Yeah,
it
it's the
should be
criteria and it's quantitative.
correct. Yeah.
The result should spit out from the process.
It should do, yes, exactly. And then, I think there are some experience type measures that we're really interested in now, because I'm a strong believer of, if we're in procurement, we've been used to these rubbish tools for a long time, and now, we want to create an environment where people actually enjoy using them, and, it's not a pain. So, there are some sort of more subjective measures there, which are really important to us still. But we try and keep it really anchored on outcomes.
And do you turn to suppliers as well, in terms of a voice within that decision-making process? Do you try and involve them explicitly, or is it more implicit? What's the approach?
Involve them from the start. We involve them from the start. I'm really not a fan of sort of cloak and daggers and not being really clear on what success is. Because I think if everyone knows what we're aiming for, we can both help each other to get there.
Yeah.
If it's a big secret at the end, and you're not sure whether you've sort of chinned the bar, as it were, then I don't think that's a great place to be in. So with all of our pilots, we're really clear on what success means for both parties.
Very good. So I don't know if there's any details you can share on, say, the Keelvar pilot and what you liked or disliked. Was there any parts in the process where you needed to change the path, or can you talk us through that?
So we always want to be starting with the problem and not the solution. So believe it or not, it wasn't just a sort of point at Keelvar. Yeah. The reason this piece of work and this pilot came about was analyzing our complex bids. It's taking too much effort. We knew we were leaving value on the table in terms of outcomes, and we weren't making best use of our data. It takes a long time, so cycle time was long. And with the garage being based in the procurement function, we believe this, and we could see this firsthand. We weren't, arm's length elsewhere. So that's what we started.
So you kind of knew the stakeholders personally by name and
correct. Yeah, and we knew what they were living day in and day out, and we knew what problems we would like to solve.
Yeah.
So bringing Keelvar in and running a pilot, we were anchoring to those particular metrics and measuring them all the way through and seeing how they changed.
Very good. And in terms of because an enterprise like BP, you're going to have lots of existing systems, and coexistence within that landscape. Yeah, I guess judging systems in terms of how they can coexist and integrate, is that part of the decision-making, I expect? And if so, how do you do it?
Yes, absolutely. So, for example, within our complex bid optimization space, we have a Reba, and that's our sort of our baseline. And so we know how long things take in a Reba, or how long things took in a Reba, and what the sorts of outcomes we were getting. So that was our sort of comparison point. And bringing Keelvar in, we were able to quite quickly see very high ROI, something like 70x in the pilot. Significantly quicker at certain stages in the process, in particular analyzing the bids, and being a lot more data-driven. So against that Ariba baseline for the work that we did in the pilot, I think it was something like, it's over $4 million of incremental value over and above what we would have saved in Ariba. But with that said, it's really important. There's a space for both. And quite often with these point solutions that we look at in the garage, you have your legacy ERP that does a job, and then you're out in the market filling that point solution, and they both can be complementary to each other.
Very good. So, as we kind of move out of the pilot phase, then we kind of prove success and start scaling. What's the handover point look like, and who's it to, and how is that managed?
Yeah, and it's a really important point, because one thing that would keep me up is we prove and can demonstrate that the thing works in BP, which is a feat in itself, and then it fails for some reason. Maybe people aren't using it, or it isn't delivering the value that we initially thought it would. So we're fairly rigid around the way that the work comes out of the garage, and we transition it across to an organization, a global business services organization, to scale, which in some cases can take many years. And the thing that connects A to B we call it a decision support pack, but it's all of the pertinent information that we learned through the pilot, all of the key things that team will need to give it the best chance of success in the longer term within BP. So that is the single point.
Very good. So, in terms of what tends to be your expectations on the vendor side, then, in terms of that single point of contact? We have a customer success team, and we've invested heavily in customer success team, ensuring that there was always someone to go to, and sometimes the CSM mightn't be able to answer your question, but they know who can answer the question. Do you set expectations when you're dealing with vendors around how that customer success team, how it needs to be able to interact and refer other experts within the business to help with problems?
Absolutely. They'll be really clear around the support model, both internally, but also from the supplier side. Where to go for help, and if things aren't working. But even more than that, Alan, because one thing that is really important to me and to the team is keeping the relationships and nurturing the relationships from the innovation perspective. I was pretty blown away by the amount of features that Dave mentioned were coming through.
Yeah.
And in a company like BP, if you're not aware of those, quite often they just go unnoticed, and we're not getting the value from them.
We feel this is an increasing problem, not just for our customers, actually for us too, that the speed of development, it's accelerated so much that how do we communicate across our team, ensure that our professional services team tend to be in the app all the time, so they know, so they're eating it up. And it's often something they've been asking for or influencing development. But then others, like in sales and marketing and so on, are wondering, have we gone live with that already? Is that? Exactly. Then we need collateral. We need materials to help. We need demo videos. We need this, that, and the other. So I can only imagine that generating the collateral and materials to support the faster release of capabilities, that's a sizable problem. But digesting it then and actually getting the most out of it from a customer perspective is equally, it's even larger, right? So organizations like BP are so large. So what can and should we be doing to make absorption of that value quicker and easier?
I think it's having the dedicated connection and the dedicated space and the time and the forum to have the conversations. Because quite often it gets packaged into some sort of operational review and how well are you doing that month. But for me, it's really important to have a separate, focused innovation conversation around what's around the corner, and sort of tangentially, having that conversation and understanding what you guys are working from is really helpful for me and people in my position, because what's happening more frequently is technology organizations are saying, oh, we can just knock that up in Claude Code. And this 2 days and we'll have a prototype. And for me, I have to show them. Did you know Keelvar shipped, was it 1,000 features or something?
It was about 1,000 releases, but not everyone is a feature necessarily. But there's too many to enumerate for sure, and it's happening too fast. I can't keep up with with what's happening. So, but we also feel like we've got to, like there's the human users and the agentic users that are using these new features. So it's now a kind of twin-pronged strategy of empowering users to use new features, but exposing new skills for agents so they can use it. And they, like Dave spoke about the fact that where we're at presently is kind of specialized use cases. In different areas, you could have Kai do different things for you, but having Kai doing anything you want within a kind of a suite of applications. So it's a whole platform where you're in Rate Manager and saying, looks like these rates are out of date, or they're going to be out of date in a couple of months. Find all the rates that are going out of date in the next couple of months and put together a sourcing event and find out which suppliers from our TMS system had the best on-time performance and only include those, or there's just so much you could start to think of. These are all use cases that people will, I suppose they'll allow them to be creative, but then for that to work, the agent and supervisor agent and all of this more specialized skill agents need to be connected and have context exposed so that all just happens. So there's a confluence of different things, but one thing you mentioned about users internally spinning up mini apps, and that's a blessing and a curse.
Double-edged sword.
Yeah, double-edged sword, yeah. So have you seen, I would say, cases internally already where people are building their own internal apps that, well, there's the potential for security vulnerabilities, but also it's sitting on someone's laptop and they're talking about something they can do that their colleague next door is saying, oh, but I can't do that.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
Yes, I have, and we're all kind of obsessed with agents at the moment, and it's the buzzword. But what I also think about is we need the users to have agency, and have that kind of that curiosity and be able to make things happen independently. So that's sort of one side of the coin, and with all the tools that are available, if individuals have that agency, then wonderful things can happen, and we've seen the likes of Claude Code. Obviously, it's a technical and security nightmare from an organization.
Security officers are having a tough time
perspective. Yeah. But then you put that in the hands of a technology organization who we're back. It's the other side of the coin then, because they quite often can think without working in procurement, without actually having to use these things on a day-to-day basis, that they can knock something up in 2 days and it'd be usable. Yeah. So it's a complicated situation, but ultimately I think it's going to be of great benefit to those individuals with the agency.
And what we see is if someone comes to us and they've built a prototype, the prototype expresses more concisely where they want to get to than a lengthy verbose description. So now we kind of have a clearer picture of where they want to get to. So it's also used, but in practice, building apps within an enterprise, it's one thing to develop a prototype, it's quite another thing to develop a production-ready, secure system that's hosted, maintained, and extensible, and fully tested. And it is offering a new pathway for communicating with vendors like us. If you want to bring things to us to say, here's something we put together ourselves. You could use it amongst a small team, but it's not something you really want to expand to hundreds of thousands of users. So we feel that it's kind of opening up new forms of conversations with organizations like Digital Garage. So, but that's something we might explore in future. But there's one thing I want to cover is that build versus buy, because BP has a very clear take on this. Could you speak to your approach to build versus buy?
Yep. So whenever we're considering an AI investment, generally SaaS in BP, we've got a framework which is make, take, or shape. Sounds like it came out of Gartner, but that's... So with the make, if it's differentiated, so if it's going to help us create revenue or move into new business areas quickly, then generally we'll make it, and we'll sort of we'll invest our limited engineering resources in those spaces. If it's commoditized, generally we'll take it because the market solved it for us. It's already out there. Someone's already built it. Why would we want to build it ourselves? And the most interesting sort of hybrid is the shape, which is where we find partners to work on collaboratively. So maybe you've got a product that we then feed in more requirements and sort of help shape that roadmap, which is very much where we'd like Keelvar to be, and I'm sure is the future.
Because I suppose we kind of a proud tradition of working with some of our key partners, and they've helped us shape what we built. We came out of a university research lab. We knew all about AI, but we didn't know all about procurement in industry, and we learned gradually. We got better at it, but we learned via that collaboration and inviting strategic development partners to help shape things. So that's something we'll always continue to do, because that's
You've got a unique spot. So what I say about procurement, we see across the business. So we can connect different business silos, but you almost have got that across many different procurement organizations. So it's almost that leverage position that you're seeing. So
yeah, because we're fortunate to work with such great customers, but I would say their skills tend to be concentrated in very specific areas where we have extremely high performers in certain categories or certain industries. But they would openly acknowledge themselves that they have areas of weakness too, because a manufacturing company is quite different to a food company or an oil and gas company. They all have different areas where they're the best at what they do, and they just try to be good at the rest. So, and that's partly the reason for this. The way we run Connect is to try and facilitate that type of cross-pollination of ideas and learnings. Now, there's one other thing I wanted to ask you about, is time to value. We're nearly out of time ourselves, so it's appropriate. Time to value, and how does that weigh into your decision making?
Oh, what's the perfect is the enemy of great sort of analogy. So time to value is a factor that we take into account when we're making our AI investments again. And what we want to try and avoid is we waste a year building a solution that's brilliant when we could deploy a solution that's okay straight away, and start getting that
improving.
Correct. Yeah, both incremental improvement, but also start capturing that value.
It's almost like that agile process in software, skateboard, bicycle, car,
exactly.
Yeah.
But what's really changed that is the things that Claude Code and the leverage that gives an individual engineer or a team of engineers to do things faster. So that time to value is shrinking when we want to buy it ourselves, make it ourselves.
One thing that strikes me is that I would say some of the practices in the tech community that some of our customers and enterprises have been adapting their ways of working to be more agile. So I think BP's Digital Garage is a great example of that type of agile process being applied extremely well. So we're out of time, but we do have some time for a couple of questions. If anybody has a question for Nick. Yes, we have Nico with a question for Nick.
Yeah, hi. So I'm interested in what do you do? I mean, the garage takes new solutions in, but do you also get rid of old solutions, right? So I think when you have a house and it's full of furniture and you keep buying new furniture, what do you do to get rid of some furniture to make sure that the new stuff that you bring in has the ability to shine?
It's a good question. Yeah, so good question. We have to, because if we don't decommission the old tools, then we just create more complexity. And then every tool we bring in, people are just like scratching their heads, what am I even doing? So it's really important that we're clear and we're deliberate about when we're bringing in new tools, but then we're also leveraging technologies like intake and orchestration to help us, clear out the old furniture.
Bit of spring clean. And does it have to be coinciding, or do you accumulate things and then every so often do that?
It's more of a ongoing process.
Ongoing, yeah.
You wouldn't want to walk into your lounge and have nothing to sit on, would you?
Yeah. Okay. All right, very good. And any other questions? Got one more.
Talking about AI, I was wondering if you were and your team using AI to maybe source technologies and to pursue your goal to identify potential new technologies, and how you were doing this.
Not yet, or not at scale. I think there will be individuals within the function that are, because we have Copilot access for everybody, so people that are taking it upon themselves to help with that supplier discovery that I think you're just referring to, but not at scale and not sort of systematic yet. We are using it in many ways to help evaluate what does come back though. So once you've found maybe a long list of suppliers, it's quite common that we'd use AI to help do the sort of background checks and market intelligence type activities.
Very good. Well, thank you all. Let's thank our guests, Nick.